kick with a 20-yard run out. Good ball for Roberto Carlos. Comes into the penalty area towards Zidane.
Nani.
Rooney! Oh, wonderful! Manchester City are still alive here. Balotelli, Aguero!
Hello, good evening. Savva here from Football Heritage TV. We'll be joined shortly by Dan Potts from Football's 12th Man podcast to discuss all things Tottenham and Arsenal. Two very different seasons, but have they meant the same thing? That's what we'll be discussing. Before Dan joins, lots of stuff going on in both camps. We know that from an Arsenal perspective, that Granit Xhaka has agreed terms with Bayer Leverkusen to go and work with Xavi Alonso, who, of course, was linked to the Spurs job. Arsenal also apparently, the biggest word in football, apparently in talks with Declan Rice and his camp. And hearing rumours of all sorts of ex-Man City players or Man City players that might be joining from Man City this year to go to Arsenal. And talking about Arsenal, here he is, Dan Potts. How are you, sir?
Bro, I had a nightmare. I come up here, I thought I'd have a nice drink of water, and I put it down, and it just went everywhere.
Mate, that's
I
all
was
right.
like,
I thought you were
that's
going to
done.
say it was
done.
vodka instead. It was a pint
No,
of
it
vodka.
needs to be, man. I've had a mad week, and mental weekend, mad weekend. But I'm here, man.
Yeah,
I'm here.
Your
How you doing, bro?
Good, though. Your hair's looking good.
That's about the only. It's about the only thing that is going well, mate. So far.
Yeah, man, you're looking good. You're looking good.
You too, bro.
I was just saying the purpose of this show in this episode. So this is episode 2 of the North London Divide. I want to talk about two very different seasons for our clubs, but ultimately they've ended in the same way. But obviously, there's a lot more to it than that. There's a lot more context, etc. So I just wanted to. Last time we spoke, Dan, I think you guys were still top. And since then, City have just become a little bit ruthless. City are doing City things. Where do you sit with this whole being second? Lots of people like to use the word bottle. I've just had an argument in a WhatsApp group about the word bottling. You know me. And look, you're gonna finish second unless City don't win any of their last 3 games, right? So where do you stand with the whole Arsenal finishing second this season? Or are you still clinging on to that 1% out of 100 that you can win it?
Oh, no, it's done. I mean, I thought it was done before Brighton, if I'm honest with you. And I think I said that last time, that I thought that we lost this league. We didn't even lose this league by 1 game. There's been a number of opportunities that Arsenal have missed to go that extra mile. And we actually got quite a good head start on Man City this season. You know, the first third of the season, City weren't looking themselves. I didn't think personally Manchester City were the Manchester City of old. And then they clicked like they normally do, and they've gone on that 15-16 game unbeaten run towards the end of the season, which means that whoever around them slips up is perfect for them, because they're not going to. So I personally feel like when you look at where Arsenal are, we can only blame ourselves. We can't blame Man City for being so good, because Manchester City have always been great. We can only look at ourselves. And, you know, there's been games before the new year that we slipped up, around the new year that we slipped up. I go back to the game at Old Trafford where we looked naive. I looked at the Southampton away game where we drew, where we clearly should have beaten them. And then we went into the new year run where we had results against Brentford at home, where Arsenal fans were really frustrated that Lee Mason ended up getting sacked due to not doing his job, where we dropped points. I don't think we deserved to win that game, even if we would have got that decision that would have gone our way. Everton at Goodison Park, you know, we saw what Manchester City did to them. When we then went there, they beat us 1-0 through a 1 set-piece goal with a new manager, bouncer Sean Dyche. And since then, Everton looked like they might stay up, but they haven't really bombed forward since that result. So it wasn't like they're a top team that's hard to beat. The only fluke crazy result they've had is obviously beating Brighton by that mad result. But that can happen in seasons. They can have fluke results. So Arsenal can look at ample opportunities. And the one thing I think I've got wrong this season on this title run was, I don't think it matters what happens home and away to Man City. I don't think the title will be won there. Actually, when you look at it, it probably would have been, because if we would have actually taken 6 points off of Manchester City, like Tottenham have done, to be fair, over the last couple of years, then we would have been able to look at this a lot differently going into the last couple of games. We haven't been able to do that. We were battered by them at the Etihad, made huge mistakes at home, which you can't do against a team of that ilk. And then I feel like there's been a bit of a capitulation and a crumble since throwing away a 2-goal lead at Liverpool. I know that we've beaten Newcastle and we've beaten Chelsea in that time, and people will look at those results and say Arsenal did well. But actually, you can't go 2-0 up at Liverpool, in my opinion, whether it's at Anfield or not, and throw it away. You certainly can't do it at West Ham. And you can't allow a relegated team with 4 games remaining to go 3-0 up against you, and when it comes to the end of the season, not beat them home or away. So I would say that we've done it to ourselves. We got absolute battering at Brighton. It wasn't even like it was a, or Manchester United naivety situation. We were just poor. We were just absolutely poor. And I honestly believe that we will look back at this season and we will say we've had some great moments, but there'll always be that bottling, capitulation, threw it away. And I think it's fair to say those names. I mean, it's terminology, isn't it? Depends what you look at.
Yeah, I mean, look, most people know now. I hate the word bottling because, look, the way I come at it, Dan, and I'd love to sit here as a Spurs fan going, ha, you bottled it, blah, blah, blah. You know me. I don't laugh at other clubs when my club are such a shambolic mess that I feel like it would be like, what would it be like? It would be like laughing at a homeless person that hasn't got any food, and I've got no money to go and buy myself any food either. Do you know what I mean? It just doesn't feel right for me. For me, I didn't think
it's like laughing at a homeless person when you're. It's like having a laughing at you've got a council flat. Let's say they've got a homelessness. It's like you're one up, but you're not really laughing too hard.
You're not.
You see what I'm trying to get at? It's like, why are you laughing so much? Anyway, it's crazy.
I just think from my point of view, the reason and whether I'm being too nice to Arsenal or not, the reason I don't ever think it was bottling was I'm a firm believer that the business end of the season is never to be sniffed at. And, as football fans and pundits, everyone makes these kind of predictions after 10 games of the season, 20 games of the season. For me, I just don't think you write off a team like Man City. I feel like no matter how good Arsenal are this year, whether it's you chasing them next year or whether it's you and Newcastle or Chelsea come back or Liverpool or United, Man City have that pedigree to go, right, we've not been great. Let's look at our next 15, 20 fixtures. Okay, we're not going to lose a single one of them. And I think they're the only team in Europe capable of that. Madrid are not. If you look at them in the title for Spanish football, Barcelona are not. PSG have been losing games left, right, and centre this season. Bayern Munich haven't looked themselves. So for me, I don't think it's bad. But would you say, all in all, if you take away the whole bottled thing, if you finish this season on 90 points from where you were last season, 90 points, second place, Champions League football, surely you're going to put that down as a relatively successful year in terms of trajectory.
Absolutely. I think at the start of the season, I predicted us to get top 4, but I thought we'd sneak into it towards the last back end of the season. I never, ever expected Arsenal to be in a title challenge. And a title race for me, I wanted it to go down to the wire. Unfortunately, it hasn't. And when people look at the previous bottlers of the years, Spurs against Leicester season, the Liverpool, Brendan Rodgers season, Manchester United in 11-12, the Aguero moment, Arsenal in 2003, 8 points clear of Manchester United under Sir Alex Ferguson, and they won it. Arsenal in 2008 when Eduardo broke his leg. I look at all of those bottle jobs that lost the title and come second that year. How many of those winners finished on 95 to 100 points, had the best manager in world football and the best striker in world football? Not many. So they might have done one of those 3 things. They might have had the best manager in the world, like Manchester United had Sir Alex Ferguson. They didn't have 95 points. They didn't have Haaland scoring 36 goals for them. So I think sometimes you look at it and think Arsenal bottle jobs, that's fine. It's a term. It doesn't actually bother me. I think I said it to you last time. If you want to say
it bothers me,
that's fine.
It bothers me, not from an Arsenal perspective. I'll tell you why it bothers me. It's like last night, I had someone on a show saying to me, will City bottled beating Nottingham Forest because they drew 1-1. And I was like, look, what we can't do is say every time someone loses a game, they bottled it. There are so many factors that go into this, right? But look, I think you guys, you guys from where you were to where you are now have done really well. the question is now, can you kick on? And we already know that Granit Xhaka is going to Bayer Leverkusen, right, to play with Xabi Alonso, to play for his team. So now that leaves you with a lot of work to do in midfield, because you're only now recognised midfielders are what? Jorginho, Partey, and what? Lokonga, if I'm not wrong.
El Neni, yeah.
El
And
Neni.
Lokonga, but yeah. Serious surgery needed, really.
So that leads me on to this. Declan Rice. There's so much talk around Declan Rice, Dan. Where are you at with him? Because I've spoken to some Arsenal fans that are a bit like, oh, is he better than what we've got? And I'm not. Yeah, exactly. So where are you with Declan Rice? Is this a realistic signing?
Yeah, I mean, it's realistic. I think he's at West Ham. The only time it becomes unrealistic for me is
Don't let Lawless hear you say that.
No, he knows. I already wound him up last night about it on my channel. But I honestly believe that if Manchester United, Arsenal, Manchester City all come in and match the bid, then it will be down to Declan Rice. And my gut feeling will be that he will go to Manchester City, because I believe he is suited to settling in that role next to Rodri along with KDB, and that will be him guaranteed trophies for the next 5 years. When it comes to Arsenal, the only pull we have is Champions League football, London-based, so he wouldn't have to move, and a bright future ahead with players that are all in and around his age. Now, Manchester City have got world-class talent, world-class players in every position. They've got a squad of world-class players. But the only thing that can bring us into it with the pull is not the fact that we're a big club and we've got Champions League football again and we're in London. It's because there's players that he already knows there that I believe, or people are saying, that he really likes. Bukayo Saka being one of them. They're very, very tight, very, very close in and around the England side, with the likes of Ben White, Aaron Ramsdale as well. And he has also, people forget, grown up in the England unders with some of the other youngsters at Arsenal, which perhaps don't get as much of a mention as Bukayo Saka, those like Smith Rowe, Eddie Nketiah, Reece Nelson, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think there's benefits that we have that we could tempt him. But I think once Manchester City or Real Madrid come in, I don't know that Arsenal would be so tempting after that happens. So at the moment, I'm hearing a lot of rumours. Manchester United are going to get taken over and going with a big bid for Harry Kane and Declan Rice. I'm hearing that Manchester City are offering Calvin Phillips to West Ham and some money to get Declan Rice. I'm hearing that £90 million is going in from Arsenal. We're going to be given a £200 million war check. It's always 200 million with Arsenal. It's never 250 or 180. It's always 200 million. Every single season we hear that. So I do think we will spend up to that this summer, because we've obviously got Champions League football back and we need to, if we want to be catching up with that Manchester City side. Declan Rice would be a perfect signing. If it doesn't happen,
I'd be very jealous.
Yeah, and if it doesn't happen, there are other. It's not like, oh my God, this is to stop the club now. There are other players out there, but I do think he'd be a fantastic player. I really do. I like him a lot.
So I've got another question for you, Dan. But before we get there, I just want to quickly share. A lot of people are seeing this now. But yeah, so if you can all see that Ivan Toney has just been banned from all football with immediate effect for 8 months, which means that Ivan Toney will not play again until the 16th of January, 2024. Now, just quickly on that, Dan, I was going to say, is a striker a priority for Arsenal in terms of where you are? I mean, you've got Jesus, who will get you. I mean, Jesus is a 12 to 15 goal a season man, and Nketiah will get you maybe 7 to 10. Are you lacking a striker? And is that now a big blow, because maybe Toney would have been that type of striker that clubs like Arsenal, even Spurs, if Kane goes, that would have been on everyone's radar?
Well, I'll answer the last bit first. Absolutely, he would have left Brentford this summer. Absolutely. Brentford are probably happy that he's got banned only until January, because they can now use him for half the season. It's actually worked out well that it's come now. I mean, they've done well to make it last this long. Can you imagine if he would have got banned for 8 months, starting immediately 6 months ago when it came out, whatever it was? It would have been like the rest of the season. They would have had no Ivan Toney, and he would have got in the summer. Now, he still might go. You know, Brentford might say, do you know what, mate? Look, go get yourself fit, keep yourself fit. We'll let you go where you need to go. but we'd like you to stay with us until this final season, then you can go where you want
Yeah.
afterwards. It could be that he'll be 28 years old at that time, and he can go. He is my
Do you
number
think
one.
do you think they'd let him go this summer now on a cut price deal? Because any club buying him now know effectively they're buying him for the next window, aren't they? This is now 2 windows
Yes.
away until he can play.
Yes, and that could be. It may be that nobody goes for him now until the January transfer window.
Right.
It may be that now. But I'm surprised it's 8 months. And I mean, I thought it might have been longer.
Mhm.
If you remember, Joey Barton got banned for doing 80 bets for like 3 months. This guy's done 232, or whatever it is. So I'm amazed that he hadn't got like a whole year of football ban, but he hasn't. That's the way it is now. He's pled guilty, which I imagine has probably taken it down a few
Yeah.
months as well. But this will be a January signing, I think, for me now, and Brentford will just keep hold of him. But Brentford might want to just think, do you know what? We know he's going in January. We'll let him go in the summer, get the 30 million or whatever it will be. I don't know what it's going to be. And then we'll go and replace him and for next season. And because we haven't got Tony whatever next year. So we might as well just say he's gone and go and get a replacement striker in. In terms of where he would go, yeah, all those clubs you've mentioned, I think would take him. I mean, I think Chelsea would take him. I think Tottenham would take him. I think Arsenal would take him. Manchester United would take him. There's so many options he's got for him. And this has really come a bad time for him for a summer move, but it wouldn't rule out a January one for me. He'd be my number one at Arsenal. I want Premier League proven players, which is why I like Declan Rice and Moses Caicedo. Ivan Toney for me, yeah, absolutely. Other options that we've been linked with, Tammy Abraham said that probably about 35 to 40 million he could be going. Always thought he was underrated. Always liked him.
Does he score enough goals though for you, Dan? I mean, I was looking the other day he's got something like 8 in 32 this year for Roma. He's got 1 in 12 in the Europa League. I don't mind Abraham, by the way. I think he's a really unorthodox centre forward.
Yeah.
I just don't know if he's I feel like he's more your supporting actor rather than your leading man. Do you know what I mean?
And I think Arsenal might have to go and get that though. A supporting actor,
possibly,
because I don't think Jesus is moving out of that position as far as Mikel Arteta is concerned. Whether you think Jesus is the number one at Arsenal, he's not being touched. I would argue that he could probably get somebody better than Gabriel Jesus, as much as I love him. In terms of his output, it's all right. He's got double figures and he has been out for 3 months, but he's not like, wow, this is a 25 goal a season striker. I think with Tammy Abraham, what you might do is everyone talks about Eddie Nketiah's goal and Trossard's impact. I think he'd probably be one of those, but he'd give us a different profiled striker. He'd give us someone who can hold the ball up, who can link up play with aerial threat. And I think that the highest English goal scorer in Europe last season was Tammy Abraham, higher than Harry Kane, higher than anybody. So he can score goals. Maybe he's had an off season at Roma. But I think I think we'd do a lot worse than him. The other option is Rasmus Haaland, who's complete risk, 20-year-old, Denmark, at Atalanta. I think he's doing well. I think he's got like 10 in 10 for the country. Not so sure what he's doing at club. It's not a horrendous record, but that would be the option that potentially would Arteta might look at.
Like a kind of
money.
A B Tech Haaland. They're talking
well,
about.
They're talking about that
Haaland,
because of his
aren't they?
name, I think.
Yeah,
it's more his name than what he's actually doing. But I mean, Balogun's the other one. I think Balogun will probably end up leaving. He's done really well in France, but so did Pepe. So I'm not getting too excited just yet. But I must say that I like a lot about this lad, and if he does want first team football, he is going to have to go. Whether that be on loan or make some money, I don't know. But looking at the Granit Xhaka situation, Balogun's another one that we could probably get between 20 and 40 million for, depending on how high you rate him. And I think that could be where we go with that. So yeah, new strikers needed, man. 100.
So let me ask you then. We'll move on to my shambles of a club in a minute, but in terms of Arsenal finishing second this year, getting knocked out quite early in both domestic cups, if memory serves me right, knocked out in the quarterfinals with Sporting Lisbon, or the round before that. What does good look like next year? Because obviously, when you finish second, I feel it's a really awkward position to finish in because there's a lot more way to go down than there is up.
How do you get progress? Yeah.
But up is catching Man City. So, for example, I've seen a lot of Arsenal fans that are talking about, and I want to talk about this now, a lot of Arsenal fans saying, sack Arteta. And I don't know if it's just me being old, Dan, right? I don't know if I'm old school, but a manager that finishes on 90 points in second place, I'm saying 90, it could be 90, a couple more, but compared to last year, I think you finished on, was it 69 points, 68 points, down in fifth. I don't understand how anybody in their right mind is calling for the sack of this manager. Where are you on that? Would you sack him?
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I know Phil just put in the chat about what did you make of the fans all leaving before the end of the Brighton game. What's amazing to me is most of those fans believe in this manager and they're all leaving on 80 minutes. Where are you going? You believe in this, don't you? I mean, I understand we're 3-0 down, but, you've been incredible all season. And now, because it's got a bit tough, you're all going. We are very much in or out at Arsenal. We're never in the middle. There's never any middle ground. There's never any united fan base at Arsenal. It's always, we love this guy or we hate him. There's never an in-between. And I think for me, this season, for the first time, actually, because I've been very much seen as quite toxic or negative about where we are going as a regime, because finishing eighth and fifth for me is an absolute failure. So when I look at what we've done this season, it's huge progress. I do have sympathy for those that are getting that have had enough, because 20 years without a league title. When I walked out of Highbury when we went unbeaten, I never would have thought it'd be 20 years. And I can tell you what, in 1990, when Liverpool won it, they never thought it would have been 30 years. So that's fair. When people say, be patient, it's a process.
In 1961, when we last won it.
Yeah, exactly, mate.
No one thought it would be 100 years, but, hopefully.
But you know what? My point is, Savva, that when people say be patient, we already have been. Like, it's been 20 years.
I get it.
And this process is done. It's now done. That is a fact. Next season, no more trust the process. It's done, right? We've had 4 years of this now. We've had 3 full seasons of Arteta, half a season of Arteta, where he won an FA Cup, by the way, with a team that since he's put a team together, he ain't won anything. He won it with Emery's lot. So I think it's, I understand some of the reasons as to why you would have concerns. He, for me, has to prove next season that he doesn't bottle the end of the season, because his Aprils look shocking. April or May for Mikel Arteta in the last 2 seasons has not been a very good couple of months for him, right? So far, he's bottled Europe, he's bottled top 4, and he's bottled the title. He's got to win something next season, Savva. It doesn't have to be a Premier League title. I'd like it to be. If it's not that, he has to go and win a trophy, because if you have nothing to show for it, it ain't a successful season, is it?
So if you don't, let's play hypotheticals. If you don't win the Champions League or the league next year, but you win the FA Cup and finish 3rd or 4th, is that for you better than a season when you finish 2nd and we're in a title race?
The reason I'm going to say yes is because you get to the end of it and you are doing that at the end of it. And the other reason is finishing 2nd, finishing 3rd, and finishing 4th. What do they all get you? The same thing. So unless you're going to win it, then you're not going to do that with a trophy at the end of it for the league. So I would say that, listen, I think it's very, very harsh to say sack the manager. And the reason I say that is because we had bloody ample opportunities to sack this geezer for 4 years running. Now we finally get there into a title race and you want him gone. On the other hand, I understand that by bottling it and being 8 points clear, 12 points deficit on the spin, and we're now 4 points off of it, it's going to be 7 when they win their game in hand. How can you be 8 points clear and then potentially lose the title by 8 points? That's really poor as well. So I get where people are at with that. He's thrown all the competitions away as well, by the way. He's going to have every single cup for this. So, when you do that, you really are risking your head on the line. And for me, next season, if we're in a position where we cannot do that at the end of it, I do believe there'll be huge pressure on Mikel Arteta, and there'll be managers out there that will look at that project. I keep saying that. Look at that club, and they'll go, cool, I'll tell you what, he might not have won nothing, but he set us up very nicely there with that squad. I'm going to take that forward. Carlo Ancelotti, Diego Simeone.
Well, it's funny you say
that.
It's funny you say that, right? So as I said, Henry and I were having this conversation about, I said, look, it doesn't matter who the manager of Arsenal is. For me at the moment, by the way, I don't think they're beating Man City to a title. I think the squad, the ability, the know-how, Pep Guardiola, Haaland, for me, there's just too much there for anyone to overcome. And what's worrying is they spent the first half of this season trying to work out how to play with Haaland. They're going to kick off next season with none of that. There's going to be none of, oh, God, how do we get him in the team? It's going to be back to normal. Now, my point of this was Henry said, oh, well, hang on. If we get Ancelotti, Sorry, we. Sounds bad, doesn't it? Sorry, Henry, he's not Arsenal. If they get Ancelotti,
I thought you meant Tottenham then. I was thinking, wow, you'd love that, wouldn't you?
No, it don't matter who we get. But
Yeah.
if Arsenal get Ancelotti, but you still got this squad, you had Declan Rice, maybe a couple of others. Do we truly believe, even with a serial winner like Ancelotti, that he would have got higher than second place?
So I'll answer that in two ways. No, we don't, because we haven't seen it, is the obvious answer.
Sure.
But you know what? I honestly believe, and people might laugh at this and say, no chance, City are too good. I don't think Carlo Ancelotti bottles an 8-point lead. I don't think he does, because he's a been there, done that, experienced manager that knows how to get across the line. And Mikel Arteta hasn't done that yet. And you could argue that people's comparisons to Pochettino and Brendan Rodgers, some people say is out of order to Arteta. Why? They're totally acceptable comparisons. Brendan Rodgers set Liverpool up for Klopp to take them and win a title. Pochettino, for me, did a very, very good job at Tottenham and put them in the same position for a title race that Arsenal were in this season. They have fine comparisons. You can't compare Mikel Arteta to Ancelotti, Simeone, even Conte, Mourinho, Pep, or Klopp.
Yeah, of course.
They're the six most successful managers. So why are they trying to do that, some of these Arsenal fans? I don't get that. He could have the potential to be one of those one day. We don't know that yet. But he has actually got to win something soon. And when you've got £500 million spent,
couldn't this year be a driver for him? Like okay, he didn't get over the line this year. But by the way, I'm not knocking him for not getting over the line, because whatever anyone says, I just didn't think at any point. And I've said this from day one.
You said
I said from day one,
yeah.
It didn't matter how many points City are behind. City are winning this league. I think they're the best team in the world by a mile. And in about 3.5, 4 hours, I'll either look really silly with that statement or bang on. But can he take this? Because he's not going to get sacked. Let's be really honest here.
Oh no, no chance. No chance. He wouldn't have got sacked if he would have got fourth, mate. If he would have got fourth, he wouldn't have got sacked. He's staying, whatever. Yeah,
exactly. So you've gone from Europa League, qualified for Champions League, and you're in a title challenge. Next year, for me, is going to be even more pressure for him, right? Because this year you've seen Newcastle go from there to there, and will keep getting better. Chelsea will be much better. I'm not saying Chelsea will be in a title race, but I think Poch will go in there, sort them out.
They got precious Poch, mate.
Every
Tottenham fan now thinks Poch is going to win them the league. It's crazy.
We're going to talk.
They need a bit of time, but Poch will do well there. But it's going to be time.
He'll build a team with those young players they've got there, and he'll get rid of the deadwood. Then you've got Man United. That we're talking about the Qatari ownership. If they come in, they're talking about leaving £1 billion for the playing side, which is just manic. Liverpool, who are currently just doing that, they're going to add Alexis McAllister and another centre half and more midfielders. For me, my whole point to this, Dan, sorry, in a long convoluted way, is it's going to be so much more difficult, isn't it, next year for Eddie Howe, Arteta, Poch, Ten Hag, because they can't all finish in that top four.
So I agree with that wholeheartedly, but the only team or two teams that Manchester City, you can forget about them. They're going to be probably winning it again. They're there, right? The only two teams I would say that I think will get close to them, whether that's 20 points, 10 points, 2 points, 1 point, are Arsenal and Liverpool. Because, and I'll tell you why, I think they already have the foundation set of a good side. Now, Liverpool need a couple of players in midfield, and they probably need another centre-half, but that's about it. Everyone else, they score goals easily. They've got unbelievable talent in a couple of their wide options, and they just need a little bit more solidarity into their spine, right? Arsenal have got an unbelievable first 11. They haven't got an unbelievable squad, as we saw this season, but we've got an unbelievable first 11. When we look at takeovers from Man United, look at what Spurs are going to do. Look at how many players Chelsea are going to get in one summer again. Look at what Newcastle have got to do to try and strengthen their depth. I do think that could take a few games for them to gel, and Manchester City, Arsenal and Liverpool could be 12 points clear of those teams at that time because they're ready now. And that's why I would say that I don't look at the argument of, well, Arsenal ain't going to do it next year because these 6 teams are going to outjump them, look. No, they might not. Those 6 teams
of course.
might not.
It's going to be crazy up there.
I do think it'll be crazy up there, but I just don't understand. Like, I see some people saying, well, because I said on my fan cam after the game, I said, look, we've managed to get above XYZ. We need to stay above XYZ and go for that gold trophy with Manchester City. And a few people said, that's rubbish. They'll all be back next year. How do you know that? How do you know they'll all be back? Pochettino, he might do a Potter. We don't know. I don't think he will, by the way. But he might do a Potter, yeah? Newcastle, they might not have start as well. They've got all those big competitions now for the first time in Newcastle's long time since Newcastle's been there. Man United might go mental and buy Rice, Bellingham, Kane, all these names, and then just have to. Well, are they just all going to be brilliant then all of a sudden? They've got to be tired.
Yeah.
So I see what I'm saying. I think with Arsenal, 1 or 2 signings that are coming into that first team and some squad players, which are going to need as well. We're not going to be like, Christ, this is a mess. I don't recognise these Arsenal players. What the hell's
it's not going to be like you're trying to bed in 5 or 6 first-team players.
Yeah.
See, I think, and you added Liverpool into that mix. They're the same. Liverpool are used to this.
Yeah, absolutely.
For me, as I said, I think it'll be tough up there. I do think Man City will run away with it again because you know what Man City are like. Pep will shift 2 or 3 of the players that are a bit older. Everyone will go, oh my God, I can't believe he's getting rid of Silva or Gundogan or Walker. And yet he'll bring in players that he evolves into being his type of player. They'll be fine. Liverpool, experienced. Newcastle, I think the difficulty they're going to have is they're the team that aren't used to playing in Europe and Premier League. So how do you go from, at the moment, it's a very settled 11 at Newcastle, right? How do you go from, here's my 11 that play once a week to, now I've got 18, 19 players that all think they should be playing. We're playing every 3 or 4 days, less time on the training pitch, more time playing. And that is why, Dan, moving it to Spurs, that's why I desperately want Spurs to finish 8th. Desperately, because I feel if ever a club needs some time away from traveling and playing every 3 days and actually 5 days a week on the training ground, it's going to be whoever the new Spurs manager is, with the new director of football, with however many new players we bring in. And I feel like wanting Europe is more of a selfish thing from fans and owners than it is actually what's good for the club right now. Do you see where I'm coming with that?
I 100% agree with you. And, Tobes is on my channel a lot and he says the same. He wants to come 8th. He doesn't want to come in that Conference League and he doesn't even want Europa if it meant that they could have a season out of it and a break. And I said the same thing when Unai Emery left. I said, just don't let me have that Europa League. And there wasn't a Conference League at the time. I was like, finish 7th or 8th. I was like, and stay out of it. And we didn't. We got Europa League. And then we did. And I expected us to get closer to a title push that season than we did. Now, we ended up coming 5th. We bottled top 4. It was a shambles. This season, we've had Europa League back. And unfortunately, we've ended up having a bit of a shambles towards the end of it, right? But with Tottenham, for me, you need 1 game a week. Look at who you're playing. 3 o'clock would be nice as well, by the way, because you get them back Saturdays. Look at who you want to play. I actually think you will come 7th. I've got to say,
I do. Unfortunately, I do.
I think you will, and it's up to you. It's a trophy. I've been bantering Lawless with this for months. It's a trophy. But if I was you, I'd play the kids and just get out of it and then just go 1 game a week in the league. But it's up to you. Tottenham are a team that would love trophies and I ain't really got many of them. That's not a dig. That's just facts. So you need to look at that more seriously, potentially, because it will get you Europa League football. And if you think you're going to get Europa League football through the league next season, maybe you won't. So Tottenham, for me, it depends. Like I've said this a lot, and I say this a lot because I believe it, but I also say it a lot to wind some of the Tottenham deluded fans up. But I think you're a bit finished at the moment. I really do. Until the owners and Levy go, I think you're going to have this all the time. You've proved it doesn't matter whether you have Pochettino, Nuno, Jose, or Conte, or Mason. It seems you're always going to have shocking results. You're always going to have poorly run club. And you're going to get a manager in Pochettino who is a project manager, and you're not going to give him a project because you're not going to back him, or you're going to finally back a manager and decide that you're not going to quite back him enough. So it's always, for me, Mr. Levy, you need to back this guy. Yeah, but we've got a real good chance of getting this go-kart track underneath the basement. I'm going to do that. Do you know what I mean? I just think,
do you know what I'd say, Dan?
Turn Tottenham into a tourist attraction.
He has indeed. And I think one of the misconceptions is that he doesn't spend money. And I think the problem is that we spend money, right? We do.
Look at what you spend it on.
Right. And this is the bigger thing for me. And I've always had more of an issue, not with how much we spend. I'm not saying we should spend as much as Chelsea and Man City because we spend good money. The problem is it's the fundamentals. There's no tracks being laid. There's no plan in place.
There's one underneath the
Yeah,
underneath your stadium.
yeah. I'm sure we'll add a running track soon as well. But
Yeah,
there's,
you will.
do you know what I mean? There's no plan that you go, okay, right.
Facts.
We're going to buy 4 or 5 players this window, but they're going to be 4 or 5 players that we all go, yeah, I see why we bought them. Instead, we have these manic summer windows where we buy 6 or 7 players of different ages, different abilities, different positions, different stages in their career, and everyone gets really gassed, really excited. And I remember last summer doing shows on my channel where it was like people coming on going, oh my God, look at the strength in depth now. We've got 2 players in every position. Spurs are going to challenge Man City for the title. All of a sudden, as that petered out, people going, he's not back the manager, blah, 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 blah. And this is a perpetual cycle at Spurs. So it's not that we don't buy. It's just that we keep buying a lot of deadwood, like Perisic at 33. When you buy Perisic at 33 on a 2-year contract, for me, that tells me that we've got no immediate plan in place for the future. Yeah. When you're getting Longley on loan, there's no immediate plan. Spence, it's just also.
I get that, but I get that, Savva, and I agree with that. But at the time you got them, you weren't trying to build for the future. You're trying to win now with Conte. Now, I don't think you did enough.
But that's what I mean. That's what I mean. There is no plan behind that.
No.
That's my point.
And I agree.
There's no.
Yeah, and I think the plan. Listen, I think Tottenham had a plan. The plan went wrong, and it was a shocking plan in the first place. That's the thing. You can have a plan, doesn't mean you know what you're doing, right? The plan, plan for me that I could see from the outside looking in was: we're getting Conte. We're desperate for a trophy. We need to win one with this manager now. We're going to bring players that he needs that are going to win it right now. And he brought in X, Y, Z. Now he didn't do enough for that because you didn't have a win now team. Yeah, you might have had a win now forward line, and you might have had a win now couple of players that can, you can put in prettily around that. But there was no spine that was ready to win now. You had a goalkeeper that's dusty.
Agreed.
You've got no defender I rate other than maybe Romero, but he looks a bit rash.
I don't even rate Romero.
There you go. So
people in the chat will get crazy about that because apparently factual information doesn't matter anymore. It's all about feelings. But just quickly, I just want to say, Jacob, big up my man, and go and follow United Spurs of America. Yes. For anybody else in the chat who was always in my shows in the summer, there were plenty of Spurs fans. They were bringing up graphs, Dan, on the screen, right? That showed.
When was
oh my
this?
God! Look, pardon?
When was this though? When?
This was last summer. So
you are joking me.
No, last summer. People bringing up. Oh my God! Look at our right back options: Spence, Royal. Look at our centre-back options, Romero and Longley now, and we've got Perisic there, and Basuma and Bentancur and Skip and Højbjerg. And everyone was getting excited, and all of a sudden, this is what annoyed me about the whole Conte thing, Dan. Everyone was getting excited and saying he's been backed. The only player that wasn't his at the time, according to fans, was Spence, because Spence is the one that he called out in his press conference and said it was a club signing. As soon as Conte started to not do well, it was, but he's not been backed with anyone. And this is the problem with fans, Dan, is we get all well excited. Not all of us, but everyone gets really, really excited in the window without actually looking, what's the plan? Do you know what I mean? And it baffles me. We'll do it again this summer. We'll buy 5 or 6 players. People are going, oh my God, they're brilliant. Oh my God, they're brilliant.
That's the thing, mate. Like, we have a deluded fan base as well, by the way. But when we look at it, I honestly cannot understand for the life of me why anybody would look at graphs and look at comparisons to Manchester City squad, because you're going to lose. Like, I honestly can't believe how many right backs Tottenham need before they can find one that's half decent. I mean, Matt Doherty, Spence, now that Pedro Porno guy who looks terrible.
Yeah.
And then you've got listen, this is, and then Spence, the only one I actually thought was half decent. They didn't fancy. So it's very, very, very poor, mate. You look at what I've just said, what Arsenal might need. We've spoken about a couple of positions in terms of the first team, right? We've spoken about Declan Rice and Caicedo coming in. We've spoken about potentially a striker. But other than that, our first 11, everybody knows what it is, and everybody thinks actually they've got a decent first 11. We definitely need to look at the squad depth. Tottenham haven't even got a decent first 11. I can think of about 3 players that I think, do you know what?
I think it's dreadful.
They are quality. Like Kane, you go Kane, Son, not this season, but Son obviously has been good in the last few years. Kulusevski, form has completely dipped, but there's a player in there for sure. Bentancur I've always rated. That's about it, mate. I'm struggling after that.
Mate, Dan, I completely agree with you. I'm of the opinion, literally now, where if they ripped up the whole thing and all 25 went, I wouldn't care, Dan. And I genuinely mean that. I wouldn't care. The problem is we're getting to the stage now where when players come in and do half well, like i.e. Kulusevski came in and did well, but over a small sample size, and everyone starts going, "Oh my God, he's brilliant. He's better than Saka, and he's going to be Ballon d'Or soon," and blah blah blah. Romero is, oh my God, Romero is one of the top 3 centre backs in the Premier League. It's like, no, he's not. Like, what are we watching here? We did it with Bentancur as well. Bentancur's a very good player, by the way, for me.
Yeah, he's good.
But
Good, yeah.
the problem for me with Bentancur is he stands out a lot against Leeds, Leicester. Do you know what I mean? Those sort of teams. Southampton.
Yeah.
When it was Chelsea's, the Man United's, the Liverpool's, it was I need to see a bit more. But for me, is that because he's not with, he's playing in a midfield 2 that's getting overrun all the time. If he was in a midfield 3 with 2 better midfielders, would that be different? So he's the one that I like, is Bentancur. Obviously, Kane, we don't know what's going to happen with him, but the rest of I wouldn't be up.
He'll stay, mate.
I like Kulu, but for me, he's had a really, really bad season. And if we didn't sign him,
better than Saka, they were telling me, everyone, all the Tottenham fans, better than Saka, apparently.
Kulusevski.
I never understood that one, but
it's poor, isn't it? I mean, look, at the end of the day, there's too many excuses. Like Romero, for me, honestly, everyone's probably bored of me talking about Romero, Dan. This guy looks absolutely horrendous. And he looks shocking. Week in, week out mistakes. And every time he makes a mistake, we get, yeah, but it's because he's playing alongside Dyer and so and so and so and so. And I'm like, I don't know about you, Dan. I'm old school. I'm of the belief top centre-backs don't go to ground. They do not go to ground. Like every time they see the ball, they don't get attracted to it. They hold, they stand up, they keep their position, they know what's around them. This guy, every time he sees the ball, he's like a fly to shit. Boom, boom, goes and clatters someone. And yet people I had this conversation with Jacob the other day, like saying Romero is great. There's nothing about him that's great. We've got to change the wording, Dan, in football, because players seem to get these superlatives before they've done anything. What do you make of Romero?
I actually don't. Can you hear me, mate? Is that you or me?
Yeah, no.
Oh, cool. You went froze for a minute. You're back now. Yeah, I honestly think that he's not as bad as what you're making out. I do agree with the bozo moments. I do agree with the rash challenges. I think if you have a calming head next to him, he might be a half-decent centre-half. However, you have to see that before you believe it. That's my thoughts and opinions.
I agree.
It might not be there. You might not be able to put... So let me give you an example. Gabriel is quite a rash defender at times. He's got a bozo gene in him, right? Gabriel can take players out. Gabriel can give away penalties. Gabriel can get sent off. When Saliba is next to him, you see an unbelievable defender. He has been probably our best defender this season. People always look at Gabriel for the bozo moments. He's been outstanding, right? When you look at what Saliba has brought, not just to Arsenal, but to him and his game, it's been fantastic. So if Arsenal go and find Tottenham go and find an equivalent, not in terms of how good Saliba will be, because I don't think Tottenham will be able to attract that. If they go and find their own Saliba, who's a calming head and calms things down, keeps things composed, keeps things controlled, I think you might see a half decent Romero. Now, the only downside to that, Savva, is once you're rash, you might always be rash.
That's my, Dan, do you know what? You hit the nail on the head just now. The problem is when we talk about players, and I was having this chat with Rants and Bants the other day, is as fans and pundits, everyone pretends they know everyone's ceiling. And I bloody hate this word, Dan. None of us know anyone's ceiling. It's impossible to know what that is, what the limit is for a player. So when we go, well, his ceiling's better than his, how do you know? Especially when they're young players. The thing for me with Romero is he does some good things, but it's worrying how rash he is. We're not talking about every game he goes to ground once and you think, oh, he's got one of them in him. 3, 4, 5 times a game, he has to go jumping into people. And I don't blame. Like when people go, "Oh, that's Dyer's fault." Why? Why is it Dyer's fault that Romero goes running out for no reason and clatters people? For me, I want to put him in that bracket of a good player, but I've seen nothing that makes him stand out for me as a top centre half that people keep talking about. He's not in the top 15 centre halves in the league for me. Put it that way.
No, well, yeah, and I mean, I'm not going to start saying he's one of the best top 5 in the league. Another example I'll give you is Granit Xhaka. When Granit Xhaka was at Arsenal playing as a holding midfielder, he was awful. He was liability. He was rash. He was making really bad challenges. He was getting sent off pretty much 1 in 5 games at one stage. When you look at Romero and you look at what Granit Xhaka was, it's quite similar in terms of how rash they are and what they're doing at the moment. But Granit Xhaka has got a Thomas Partey next to him now and a Martin Odegaard, and it's an unbelievable balance. That's perhaps what Romero needs to see how good this guy is. But I still feel that even if you put Saliba next to him, that equivalence, you'll still have a bozo in games. He's not going to just all of a sudden go, right, I've got someone next to me, knows what they're doing now. I won't be fouling anybody anymore. Because I don't think he's meaning most of the time to doing it. It's just the fact that he's just been left or he's last minute or it's him going in with these tackles. So Romero, I wouldn't sit there and say he's a shambolic player, but at the same time, I don't understand the absolute hyping up. I mean,
I think that's it for me.
Toby told me he loves him, Toby. He's going to be better than Ben White. He's a brilliant centre-back. He's outstanding. And I never got that. You know, I always thought Ben White was a better defender. And I always thought Ben White was a better footballer, to be fair. And I think he's both now. And I think that's been proven. But Romero, very rash player, man. Very rash.
Yeah, listen, and the thing is, Dan, I think you know me well enough by now. I don't go overboard about players. I'm not one of these fans who sees a player for 3 months and goes, "Oh my God, this is the second coming of Cristiano Ronaldo or Messi or whatever." Right? For me, I want to see Romero consistently not do stupid things. Now, okay, I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt that okay, he's around poor players and that might be why. But for me, my worry is what you just said. That is the rash part of the game. Is that part of his game? And if it is, some players don't lose that. Top defenders I saw, even like when they were young, Ledley King was a superb centre half. Never dived in. Ledley King would go to ground if it was a last ditch tackle that needed to be made, right? A recovery tackle.
He'd win it as well.
And he'd win it. Timing. Rio Ferdinand, another one. Don't go diving in. Jan Vertonghen and Toby Alderweireld didn't go diving in. Watching this guy, I don't know if a lot of fans know about the centre-backs you've had in the past, but for me, he's nowhere near the level of the centre-halves we've had. I
agree with that.
He worries me.
I grew up in the 90s, so I had Gary Mabbott, and then went Ledley King, and then you look at what you've had in terms of Vertonghen and Alderweireld as a partnership. Romero, I mean, he couldn't lace their boots, those players. Do you know what I mean? So I think you've got a half-decent centre-half, and to be fair, the other thing is, does he look all right? Because he's surrounded by shite. I mean, you've got a bunch of absolute clowns there, mate. You're back to when Arsenal had the Mustafis, Skelachis, Stepanovs, David Luiz's, Socrates. You've got loads of them. In that David Sanchez was 47 million, apparently. Someone told me the other day. What a absolute saw you coming. He is terrible. Tanganga doesn't really look like he's going to be anything special as far as I'm concerned. Eric Dyer, you're giving this guy a new deal. I mean, it's funny for me, but just get rid of the guy. He's no good. You know what I mean? It's just poor, man. There's some, and that Longley don't look much either. So
I think this is the key thing as well. There's two ways of looking at it. We can sit there and say he's playing with bad players, yeah, and they're bringing him down. Or I can look at it and say, okay, but what if we bring in better defenders and all of a sudden it shows him up to be the worst one? Look, I'm not saying that's the case. I'm not. I just don't get gassed up. The same way I didn't get gassed up last season about Kulu and everyone going, "Oh my God, you don't know a good player." It's like, well, look at him this year. Yeah. For me, players have to start doing it consistently over a few years before I get really, really hyped up about them. And unfortunately, the internet and football fans don't like that. They want immediate, you're world class or you're shit. There's no in between. Do you know what I mean? You're God's gift or nothing. And I just don't reside to that. I'm not even going to answer that. Razor or Romero. Neil Razor Ruddock, another very rash hard, dirty centre half, but I'm not putting him in any of my best lists. Look, Dan, I know. Look, we both got things to do at 6, so just for the last couple of minutes, what are you expecting to see from Arsenal this this summer in terms of we talked about you looking at a midfielder, either someone like a Casado or a Rice. What else do you need to get in?
So when people look at this Arsenal first 11, there's not many players that they would look at and go, how the hell is he in there? He ain't good enough. But actually, when you look at the squad depth, it's pretty poor. So what we need to look at next season is where we are playing football games and our bench is needed. We're not bringing on Fabio Vieira, Eddie Nketiah, Reece Nelson, Rob Holding. Those players have now turned into the names that we're going to go and buy. And we need to upgrade now on what is a very good side, but is poor backup. Now, I look at it personally and think this. We need to decide what we're doing at right centre-back or right-back. Because I look at Ben White and that is all we've got. Tommy Asu has been injured for 2 seasons that we've had him, majority of the time. So you either look at trying to get somebody in as well as him, because you know he's made of glass, or you go and get a right centre-back in so that you don't have to play Ben White there and have somebody else at right centre-back. Now, Mark Guehi is apparently the guy that Crystal Palace, that Arsenal are looking at. I think he's a very good centre-half. I like him a lot. I think he's a good age, and I think he'd be fantastic for us. That would be one good signing. I think we need to look at midfield surgery, and people are talking about Rice or Caicedo. Both. We need both. Yes, it's going to cost 170 odd million potentially. That's what you've got to spend when you're in this situation that we find ourselves in. If we're trying to scrape in the top 4, you might look at going and get Tielemans on a free. Yeah, but we don't need that. We've got players like that, Jorginho and El Neni. We've been there, Lokongas, all those players that just ain't good enough for the first team. There's no point going to getting one more that's just going to go and compete with El Neni or get ahead of Jorginho. So those 2 players would be 2 that I'm interested in. I'm hearing a lot of rumours around Mason Mount as well. Not a player I love, if I'm honest with you. I think he works hard, but I think it's a position that we look at and need because Ødegaard gets injured. Fabio Vieira is not going to make it at Arsenal. And you can click me up. He is not that guy. He is just not that guy. So we need to go and look at that position. Saka needs a replacement. And people laugh when I say this and go, oh, that's definitely ship sailed now. I just go and get Zaha on a free. He's a massive goon. I can play on both sides. He's going to be guaranteed to give you creativity, assists and goals. And he definitely would do a job if Trossard comes in, Zaha comes in, Smith Rowe comes in, Martinelli. You need these players to be coming in when players are injured. And then a striker up top, which we've mentioned. So we're not talking about 2 or 3 players here. We're talking about 5 or 6 for Arsenal's again. Because, you know, if we're serious, Savva, we don't want to be going, do you know what? Arsenal signed Rice and Zaha. Let's go again. Well, that's not enough. Rice and Zaha is not enough. You know, so that's realistically what we've got to do.
I think Zaha's a wonderful option for anyone. I mean, I agree. He must be a really frustrating day at the office for fullbacks. It must be. He's one of those players. I think as fans we don't realise when you get a top winger who's got pace, skill, can run at you. We all go, oh, they're luxury or they're flair players. I bet you the fullback is thinking, oh, I'm in for a real crappy game today because he'll go right, he'll go left, he'll take you on the outside, he'll take you on the inside. You know, it's interesting. I think it'd be a really good signing. But hey, that's just me. So next season, I think is going to be really interesting. I think we're going to start to see a lot of people that are going to have a lot of expectations. I don't know about you. I think we're going to see a lot of managers being sacked again next year purely because everyone thinks their team should be up there challenging. And the more teams that bolster up doesn't mean the more teams that can be up there, right? There's numbers 1 to 10 for a reason. So it's going to be interesting. Just quickly, last thing before you go. Would you take James Ward-Prowse?
Really like James Ward-Prowse. I think his set piece and taking is outstanding. Great right foot. But I'm going to say I wouldn't because I think we can do better than him. And that sounds really snobby, doesn't it? Because he's a good player. But I actually do think like Tottenham or a team fighting in those positions next season would actually do better. I think he'd come in and walk into your first team and be a better signing for Tottenham than he would for Arsenal. I'm not sure if he gets into this first team, James Ward-Prowse. I like him a lot, though. I do like him as a footballer.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I saw a comment yesterday from someone that said James Ward-Prowse is just Jordan Henderson, but with set pieces. And I thought to myself, I bet you most midfielders in the country would love a CV like Jordan Henderson's.
Yeah, that's really disrespectful. That is really
mad, isn't it?
disrespectful. I
It's
mean,
mad.
wow.
The captain of
I tell you what,
Liverpool, winning the league,
well,
Champions League, FA Cup, League Cup, Super Cup. I mean, it's absolutely
if he's a
unbelievable.
Jordan Henderson with free kicks, then Tottenham better sign him because he'd be a good signing.
I think that's exactly what Spurs miss. Spurs miss a Jordan Henderson. Not now Jordan Henderson, but the Jordan Henderson who was 25, 26, 27. Spurs missed that. An all-action midfielder with that winning captain's mentality. But hey, Dan, I'll let you go. I know you've got something going on at 6. So thanks very much, mate. I'll see you next week. Thank you to everyone in the chat. Please go over and subscribe to Football's 12th Man podcast. It's a great watch. Dan has some great guests. And people like Toby and myself. So not so great guests, but hey, it is what it is. Thanks everyone. And we are out of here. By the way, before we are out of here, go over to Henry Wright TV. Henry and I are going to be having a bit of a bitch and a moan about Spurs for an hour. See you later.